Welcome to Insider Events, a new era of retail media, presented by Snowflake. Here's our host, senior advertising reporter at Insider, Lauren Johnson.
Hi, I'm your host, Lauren Johnson, senior advertising reporter at Insider. Welcome to a new era of retail media, presented by Snowflake. Today, we will unpack what the new era of retail media looks like, with combining first-party data on shoppers, exclusive inventory, and engaging ad formats. Retail media is now the third largest digital channel in the world. Our conversation today is among leaders representing the perspectives from the agency side, the retailer side, as well as the tech side. And we will address questions such as, what are the key benefits of using retail media channels for advertising? How retail media changes the advertising industry, and how brands can stay ahead of those changes. How to navigate the evolving role of retail media and the challenges that brands are encountering in the ad industry. We'd love for you to join the conversation on social media by using the hashtags InsiderEvents and Retail Media. You can also submit questions for our panelists through the Q&A widget on the event site. And we want your feedback. So in the resource section, you will see a link for our survey, which you can take at any time during or just after the event. Now, I'd like to welcome my guests. Christy Argulon, SVP of Retail Media at Albertsons Companies. Glenn Coney-Bear, the Executive Lead of Retail Media and IPG Media Brands. Aaron Foxworthy, Industry Principal of Agencies and Advertisers at Snowflake. To kick off our discussion, I think it would be great for us to sort of level set and get our audience to understand first what you do, and then also why retail media has become such a hot topic. Christy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I am the lead of Albertsons Companies retail media business that is branded Albertsons Media Collective. And the sole purpose of this business is to bring Albertsons retail media solution to the marketplace in the U.S. For people who are not familiar with Albertsons, we are about 14 different brands that you may know as Jewel Osco or Safeway, your favorite local grocer, all aggregated together under one Albertsons banner. And we are on a mission to be one of the top 5 to 7 retail media networks in the U.S. We're reasonably new. Albertsons leaned into this space 2 years ago. And prior to that, I actually was at Target launching Roundel for Target. So this is my sport, and I'm super excited to be here today. And Lauren, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Glenn, tell us a little bit about what you do at IPG.
Sure. So I'm the executive lead of retail media at IPG Media Brands. So IPG Media Brands is where the media agencies sit within Interpublic, which is the ultimate holding company. And what does that job entail? Well, it involves trying to help our clients, which tend to be CPG, big CPG brands or endemic brands, as we know them as, maximize returns from retail media. And we do that globally. So we do it in every country that's significant around the world. The US being a huge market for us, of course. And of course, it's a challenge, as no one was really talking about retail media maybe 3-4 years ago. Now everyone is talking about it, and the challenges that come with it.
Great. And Aaron, tell us a little bit about your role.
Hey, hi, Aaron Foxworthy. I'm the industry principal at Snowflake, covering agencies and advertisers. And so I have a wonderful job of helping our brands and agencies mobilize their data across our data platform globally. So how do you think about bringing your consumer data together so you can take advantage of things like retail media? I'm so excited to be here today.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, let's sort of talk about what factors have kind of contributed to retail media's growth and evolution over the past few years, and why it is now, the third largest digital channel. Why? Just gonna, I guess, throw this out to maybe Glenn first. Glenn, why do you think retail media has become such a hot topic these days?
I think it's a bunch of reasons. I don't want to be the first person to mention the pandemic in the first 2 minutes, but that's part of it for sure. But as is the privacy debate, cookie deprecation, as marketers, we at agencies and brands alike have become hooked on on accountability, on targeting, and that's going away on the open internet in a lot of cases. But within retail media, you can really pinpoint an audience quite accurately, and marketers love that. And on top of that, retail media is about as close as you can get to the sale as is possible digitally, and so that level of measurement is really interesting. Did this media create a sale? Has been a question we as marketers have had for years. In retail media, you can answer that question. At least you can do it within an individual retailer. There are challenges across retailers, as we'll I'm sure come to later.
Erin, why is retail media so hot these days?
I think retail media has the advantage of really taking what we've done in the last decades around digital advertising and addressable media and leveraging those technologies for now, right? We've been leveraging things like SSPs and DSPs and ad servers and bidded environments. And that's matured, right, over the last 2 decades of kind of digital advertising. And so I think retail is taking what Glenn just said, the data, right, the retail environment, but also it has a mature technology foundation and ecosystem to leverage. And so I think it's really helping accelerate kind of where retail media is today.
Christy, you mentioned obviously you've been in the space for a while, even prior to Albertsons companies. Why is everybody just suddenly talking about retail media so much these days?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of key reasons, and has a lot to do with what Erin and Glenn have already brought up. I actually have grown up on the media side of the business. I worked at IPG for a while. I've been client side in terms of having significant budgets to spend in the marketplace. And there has always been some voids in the marketplace in terms of what was available. And it wasn't at the fault of anyone. It's just the capabilities and the data and the technology and the computing power didn't exist before. And so what you're finding now is, as Glenn points out, there are things that are happening in the marketplace that are actually going to compromise the market in terms of how we've operated as media and marketing people to date. But if you think of how retail media can actually fill the void, it's actually an improvement in the marketplace. So the fidelity of the data that retailers can bring to the marketplace and the types of audiences that we can build are a big improvement from what we've had in the past to use to transact on when you think of the type of data that cookies create for us. So the ability to have higher fidelity data to build higher quality audiences, real people doing real things, and then to be able to have the measurement to show that an item moved off the shelf, or eventually that Albertsons group of customers actually went and built a car online. Like, there's all these different applications to retail media that is coming. And so the industry is just really taking notice because of the higher quality data and the ability to truly do closed loop measurement and prove that something's sold. Also, to Glenn's point, I think everyone recognizes we are at a very early stage in terms of the maturity of retail media and some of the things that will be worked through over time. But even the contribution that we're making to driving sales and driving growth for CPGs in particular is something that everyone is taking notice of. And enough of the big brands have been in the retail media space for a while and have validated the importance of retail media to driving business outcomes as well. So it's just, I think, with more certainty and more proof, the industry is seeing that retail media is the real deal.
Right. I mean, Erin, as we sort of are talking about this, I'd just be curious about what you think are some of the key advantages that retail media offers to advertisers compared to other advertising, channels out there.
Yeah, I think similar. I spent most of my career also on the buy side. and spending against all kinds of different types of ad platforms in different environments. And I think, again, Christy really hit on it very much. There's a lot of digital environments that do not have the transactional data, the SKU level data, the visibility into their customers. And when you don't have that data, it's very hard to feed back into like algorithms that are supposed to find those consumers, right? Creative messaging that would work. Right? If you don't have the signals to drive back into the platforms to allow the optimization and the segmentation and just really the understanding of your consumers, that's hard. And many channels, struggle to have those, right? Channels that we've been buying on for many, many years, whether that's walled gardens, whether that's, offline channels, right? There's just many, different areas that don't have the richness of that data. And I think that that's the huge differentiation that retail media can bring. Now, there's a lot of technology that needs to underpin that, right? There needs to be a lack of data silos. There needs to be able to be a data collaboration, right? We'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but machine learning to, right, really start to predict those audiences, right? But the foundation of just having the visibility into the consumers is there, right? And I think that's really the key.
Mm-hmm. Just in terms of like how sort of the combination of, you've got first-party data, exclusive inventory, engaging ad formats, how does that sort of create a unique value proposition for brands? Christy, you want to take that one perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the perfect storm. And where the industry has been, we've only been able to get to what I'll call 75% of bright in those key areas. And now to be in this environment where we have a better data set to work off of, we have the ability to really test and learn things in a much faster way. There's kind of a couple of things that we see consistently. So using our audiences on our channels drives an incredibly high ROAS for advertisers because you're about as close to the purchase moment as you can. But we're also seeing that even if you are doing things off channel and maybe not even able to measure closed loop sales and product moving off the shelf, just using higher quality data on which to build a media plan off of actually naturally gives you what we have consistently seen as 20 to 30% greater return, just because the quality of the data is there and the quality of the audience is there. So at a very base level, higher quality data gives you a better lift because, again, it takes out the margin of error in cookies, as I'll call it. But then on top of that, now we're able to live up to the accountability that every marketer is looking for, to be able to show that marketing spend actually drives sales. And, there's a lot of great modeling out there that has been answering that question for a number of years, but to now get it down to that definitive of a SKU level is a real plus for the market. And I think that those pieces are a really important part for everyone to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also retail advertising is just so much different from other types of digital advertising. So I also just want to dig a little bit deeper here as the retail media landscape has been changing and gaining momentum.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another point that I want to pick up on in terms of what you were saying regarding content or the experience. Retail media, the place where it is right now, is that we're still digital banners for the most part, price and item. There isn't a whole lot of really rich content that's being done yet. So I think that there's a lot of room there in terms of what you're referring to in terms of creating richer experiences. We create really efficient and effective experiences right now, but does it have that richness? Think of, all the ways that food can inspire you and really draw you in. Retail media hasn't quite gotten to that place yet. And then the other place that we're leaning into right now is applying retail media data and measurement to things like linear TV, where it really gets interesting. And when you juxtapose that to maybe where Nielsen is in terms of impressions, did I get the impressions I thought I bought? We can actually take the measurement to a different place.
Yeah, I mean, is video, in other words, like an interesting area that maybe retail media hasn't gotten as much into, I guess, as other types of other ad formats like we were just mentioning a second ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So think of Pinterest-like content or YouTube cooking instructions, TikTok, that kind of content actually on our owned properties as well as on the social platforms is a really rich opportunity for us. Retail media networks aren't necessarily known for having big studios and to be able to pump out a lot of content. So at this point, we have to rely on the content that the advertisers bring to the relationship, and so that's a key component too. And would love to even hear from Glenn in terms of what he's seeing from his clients in terms of leaning in from a content perspective.
Yeah, Glenn, what sort of assets do your brands typically have, maybe when they are investing basically in retail media?
I mean, it varies around the world for sure. I mean, if you want to look where the future for the Western world is, then you tend to look east. And if you look in the east, actually, social and commerce became one some years ago, and it feels very natural. Whereas it wouldn't feel natural today for, say, you go to Albertsons to do your shop, and all of a sudden there's a TikTok influencer telling you how dope the bread is, right? It's gonna feel odd. So we're not there yet. And I would say, actually, what brands are saying to us mostly at the moment is not where are the content opportunities, where are the best content opportunities within retail media. They're saying, where is the best data within retail media? Where is the transparency? Where is the most effective measurement? Because they can see that there is a sale, but do they know it's an incremental sale? Do they know if they move spend from retailer A to retailer B, whether that would be a positive move or not? And those are the questions that we're trying to answer right now. I don't think we're that far away from some really innovative retail media content, but we've got to sort out probably our measurement house first.
Mm-hmm. Erin, in what ways are you sort of seeing the sort of rise of retail media channels reshaping the traditional advertising industry? What fundamental shifts has it brought with it?
I think a lot of the conversation that we're having right now which is really interesting. There's the concept of the on-site, right? So how are you actually serving what we talked about, these banners, these search ads, and then there's more of the offline, right? When you're in the stores and what's that environment look like? And I think the unification of those two things and be able to measure those two things is really fundamentally different from a lot of the channels people have seen. They might have done those separately, but not holistically. And so to do that requires a lot of things. It requires the ability to have the right technology platforms to bring that data together. It requires things like our rich identity partners. It requires you to have things like consent management on how you're hitting those customers in those environments. And then one of the areas that Snowflake really leans into is then how do you bring that together and then collaborate on that data, right? How do you allow brands to bring their own measurement for transparency, as an example, so they can do things like cross online, offline, reach frequency, right? Or how do they bring that incrementality measurement without exposing maybe their underlying data sets? And so a lot of the times it's not only just the technology and the unification of the data, it's also what does data collaboration look like, right? When you're following privacy, right, regulation and consent, you're building trust with your consumers. And then also, right, how do you think about from a signal loss perspective, right? We talked at the top of the call, right? There's going to be a world in where first-party data is, one of the key ways we transact, right, in this industry. It's going to be much harder, right, when we have signal loss. And so a lot of the cloud technology, like luckily where Snowflake sits, is helping a lot of these things come together. Right? And I think that's really the big difference for retail is that they have this rich data, but data collaboration for us to continue to be able to do the things we want to do, right, is going to require new technology.
Mm-hmm. It's also seeming to require different approaches from a lot of advertisers. Glenn, I know IPG has sort of recently launched the retail media retail practice that obviously you're involved in. You've seen other sort of holding companies and agencies make similar moves. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're structured and why you have sort of developed this practice?
Yeah. I mean, Erin just used the word unified, and that's our favorite word. So what we've built is a unified retail media solution, because while the performance of retail media networks is good on the face of it, the challenge that brands have, especially those endemic brands that have a level of commitment to retailers anyway in terms of promotional spend, the challenge they have is what I referred to earlier: is how do I really know whether retailer A is better than retailer B when the data I get back from those retailers is totally different? The look back windows are totally different. ROAS means a different thing to each of them. And then, on top of that, how do I know which of the tactics are really truly working? Sponsored search, sponsored display, and then the big question is, but the sales I'm getting, are they incremental? Are they truly incremental, or will I get them anyway? And so the unified retail media solution is designed to solve for that. And it touches on what Erin just said. Actually, it at its heart is bringing disparate data sets together in order to compare and contrast and harmonize that data, so that we could genuinely say to our largest CPG clients, okay, yes, we're actually seeing retailer A is outperforming retailer B, so we think we should be moving spend. And we can do the same as well with audiences. The audience data at retailers is really rich, really powerful. But you want to be able to buy a consistent audience. Big CPG brands don't want different audiences based on different retailers. They spend millions, if not billions, of dollars working out who their target audience is. That's exactly who they want, and so we need great technology to be able to go and find those audiences that are as similar as possible in every retailer. And so, the solution is about unifying retail media, right from the start, audience definition, through to planning, through to optimization, through to measurement. And it's also, though, where the industry is heading. And I read, Christie's Alberson's manifesto, I guess is the right way to call it, on this, and I loved it. I haven't seen another retailer say that, and it's genuinely what brands are crying out for. More standardization, and I think when we solve that, we will see a true explosion. I mean, it's growing, retail media, it's growing rapidly. That's when we'll see a true explosion.
Christy, do you want to talk a little bit about how you're sort of seeing agencies and advertisers adjust their strategies and allocate more budgets to retail media, sort of similar to what Glenn was saying? Curious if that sort of extends elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Lauren, and thank you, Glenn, for kind of the tee up and the call out. One of the things that we do here very consistently, and my boss, who's also the CEO of our company, sits in a lot of client meetings with me, and we're hearing loud and clear that there is so much interest and so much goodness coming from retail media. But if we continue to each be a snowflake, not the same application here, Erin, in terms of the use of the word snowflake, but if every one of us is a snowflake, and it's nearly impossible for any one client, let alone multiple clients, to be able to compare us to each other, there will be a cap on how much contribution we can make to the media industry, the growth of key companies in the US, also around the world, and certainly the benefit of retail media for a retailer. We are hearing from clients that they are in an economic time when everybody's being asked to freeze on hiring, or to cut back, to hold back on headcount, because we're so complex as a media sector. A lot of marketing groups are having to hire incremental people to try to normalize us. So what we've been trying to do is to make this push to bring the industry together around some areas where we can standardize. And Glenn is leaning into the one that is the hottest point for everyone, which is measurement. And the fact that we each measure differently, we each include different types of transactions in the data that we're using. We measure incrementality, but not everybody does, or if they do it in a different way than we do. We've already released our incrementality methodology to the marketplace just so that we can help assist setting some of these, what I'll call watermarks. So where are we consistent? And then we can have a conversation with the client on where we're different, and then they can decide if they like those differences or not. So the push for standardization is a key one. It is, getting back to your question, Lauren, the deciding factor on whether or not we will start to see more ad spend come toward retail media. And if we continue to be this difficult to navigate, it's hard for brands to spend as much as they would like to with retail media. And so we have got to get over these foundational elements that the industry is very open to solving for, and we just need to get there as quickly as we can. We're doing a lot of work, as you know, we kind of published a white paper this summer. We also released a framework with the key areas where, if we can align as a media sector on kind of where the similarities make sense. The idea is for the IAB to take it and incorporate it into a lot of the work that they're already doing around standardization, in an effort to just do our part to accelerate getting to a place where there is less friction for a brand to spend money with us. We do see a lot of shifts happening between shopper marketing dollars and brand marketing dollars. A lot more CMOs are now overseeing both. A lot of CMOs are seeing the value of what I'll call accountable media, and retail media being one of them, but there are others, in that they're leaning into those more and more, because marketing spend needs to be seen as an investment. It can't be seen as an expense. And we're now in an era where marketing can be proven as an investment in something that drives growth. You're not still trying to build the case for why brand actually adds value to your stock price or your reputation. We do that, and then we show how marketing also drives growth.
Glenn, where are you seeing some of your clients pull or use money outside of shopper marketing in that case? Or are they, maybe, is a better question.
Yeah, they are. I mean, the answer, the answer to the question, where is the retail media budget coming from, is multiple places. I don't think we've got one client that says, oh yeah, it all just comes from insert area here. Some of it's brand new. Most of it isn't. I'd say that the most common source is more traditional shopper marketing budget. But some of it's coming from brands, some of it's coming from other performance channels. You'll see brands who switch on or off some social channels for whatever reason that may be, and that will often go into retail media. So it's a real mixed bag, and I think as well this is complicated further because as brands, as marketers, whether at an agency or even at a brand side, you're used to this. Performance marketing sits in marketing. Retail media sometimes sits in marketing, and it sometimes sits in sales, and it sometimes sits in both. So we're having to open up new conversations. And when I talk to our brand clients and I ask them, what are they suffering with inside their organizations? Organizational structure is one of the big things, because they're, everybody wants to have a really fluid media budget, so you can see what works and move money easily. That's hard enough when it's all within one marketing department. It gets doubly hard when it's a marketing and a sales department who may or may not talk very much. So yeah, I think that's the challenge there for brands is to sort that out. Decide where retail media budget sits and stick to it, or maybe even merge sales and marketing. There's no right or wrong answer to that, but certainly it has to be resolved, because at the moment, one of the challenges we find in order to maximize returns for our clients is the ability to have true budget fluidity. Now, it can take weeks to move budget from A to B just because we don't know who to talk to because it's not our usual marketing contact.
And you know what, Glenn, that's such an important point to make. I was just reading an article that came out this morning that said by the end of 2026, they expect retail media spend to exceed linear TV spend. And so if a CMO is trying to figure out the effectiveness of their marketing, but they don't necessarily have control over this significant of an investment that's out in front of consumers, then how do you truly optimize your marketing spend?
Yeah, yeah. And I can tell you that we got an RFP in recently from a client, I won't name who, obviously, or a prospect, in fact. And they said, I'll paraphrase a bit, but they said, by 2025, we want 25% of our sales to be derived from online. And also, we want 25% of that to be retail media. Well, that's what they're expecting. That's less than 2 years away. And currently, they're at 8%.
Yeah.
It's a 3x increase for a CPG, global CPG, under 2.5 years, which is crazy growth. It's crazy growth. And the challenge will be, it will be a huge organizational challenge for them and many others.
Mm-hmm. Maybe switching gears a little bit, let's talk a little bit about collaboration and integration, what you see there. Aaron, how can collaborations between retailers, tech companies, and advertisers enhance the effectiveness of retail media campaigns?
It's interesting because we just talked about the silos that sit within marketing and agency teams. So there's also silos between data teams, right, and their marketing counterparts. And that silo in itself is as important because the data is what fuels everything we're talking about, whether that's the brand's first-party data from a targeting perspective or the retailer's data. And so at Snowflake, again, right, our overall goal is to mobilize world's data. And so what that means when we get into the marketing sector is making sure you have a clear view of your customer. So where your data is coming in, the technology that can land in a single source, reduce the silos. So now you can shine a spotlight and say, I understand the data I have. What I see in that data is I might have holes, right? I might need to enrich that data. I might need to bring in other transaction data. I might need to bring in survey-based data. I need to enrich and understand those consumers. I need to work with world-class identity providers that can help me strengthen the durability of my data. And then we talked about earlier, once you have that foundation, now you're giving your data science teams, right, a clear view of that data. Now we're looking at things like, what's the propensity that audience is going to purchase next? What's the propensity, right, or suppression? These audiences are never going to purchase this product. I need to suppress these, right? And now once that foundation is there, right, in a scalable platform that allows those things to come to your data, now the data collaboration starts, right? Now we're talking about the integration. So there's a way that Snowflake actually shares data that's really unique to the ecosystem where you can share data, right, without having to build an API or making a copy of your data. And so we have more and more organizations have these fine-grained controls of how data is shared. And now, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, we also have an advanced framework called a clean room infrastructure. So this is where you can actually do the things like addressable media, right, targeted audience, or do measurement, bring your own measurement without exposing any party's, right, underlying data set. And so again, once you have that clear view, right, you're in lockstep with your IT organization and your data teams, now you're unlocking these amazing collaboration opportunity, right, that's coming new to the industry that these cloud technologies are now providing, right? And so we see kind of that long journey, right, the retail side doing it as well as the brands, right? We sit on both sides, right? So we can see our brands starting to do their customer, right, journey better as well as the retail companies. But it's really these platforms that are allowing that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think you're seeing more retailers work with tech companies these days, and where would you like to see, that sort of headed, and what else can sort of be done there, Aaron?
This is really just an advancement of cloud technology, right? This is a lot of data, right? If you think about the scalability of some of the data that's coming off some of these platforms, like just ad logs within a DSP, just as a pure example, these are billions of rows of data, right? You have to have the ability to scale up, scale down your organizations. And a lot of these technology, these platforms, and allow for that now, right? They have the compute power, they have the engines, right? They have the architecture to allow for really the ability to scale up and scale down vast amounts of data, right? Shopper data that's coming in. And just frankly, before it's been very locked into, server technologies, less cloud-based technologies. And so it's really that advancement that I think that's unlocking a lot of these use cases.
That's interesting. Let's also sort of move on to talking about the consumer experience and privacy when it comes to retail media. As retail media becomes more pervasive, how are brands sort of ensuring that their ad efforts enhance the customer experience versus disrupt the shopping experience? Glenn, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think actually that question is as old as advertising itself. I'd imagine the very first adverts, hopefully, I'm sure definitely before we were all born, there was that problem was there. When you put an advert up, is it within an environment, if it's a store environment, is it improving the customer experience? Is it impeding it, or is it having maybe no effect? And actually, so I think the onus, yes, it is on the brands to make sure that the adverts that they're putting on retail media networks fit, if you like, fit with the audience, fit with the retailer. The onus is just as much on the retailer as well, to make sure that they're not, bolting on ad space, which some are, and most even retail media networks that we consider today to be reasonably well established are new, within the last couple of years. That's really, really, really new. If you have a look at what Google paid search looked like in year 2, it was horrific. And now it's incredibly sophisticated and chock full of machine learning and AI to do the job for you. And that's where we'll get with retail media. But I would say the onus on customer experience lies with the retailers. If they get it right, then it makes the brand's life much, much easier.
Christy, how are you handling that in that case in terms of balancing consumer shopping experience with advertising?
It's a constant discussion. And, there's so much benefit to retail media for the retailer as well as for the brands. Understanding where the line is, as Glenn is mentioning, is a really important piece of what we do. I think first and foremost, we have a promise that we've made to our customers in terms of how are we using their data the way that they have requested that we use it. And also, are we creating an elegant shopping experience for them so that they don't feel like we've put ads in between our relationship with them? And so there is it is on us. It is our responsibility. It's my responsibility to make sure that we never cross the line between what our customers are asking us for versus, all the things that we could do. Just because we could doesn't mean that we should. I think that most retailers are doing a pretty good job on their digital property, so their app and their websites. I think the next big frontier where we could either get it really right or get it really wrong is what we do with in-store. And especially as we start to digitize in store, because if you think about it, we could be flashing lights at you all day long as you're walking through the stores, and we could get really annoying, or we could turn up the volume on the radio that's playing in the aisles as you go by, or your phone could be buzzing you every 30, not even 30, every 3 feet. So where we design an elegant customer experience versus where we make I'll call it a revenue grab, it has to err on the side of an elegant customer experience, because the second we cross that line, we actually create great risk for our reputation, our relationship with our customers. And then in the end, you don't have a retail media business that's as large as it could be. So it's one of the fundamental principles that we have as a retail media network is to guard that customer relationship first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Maybe going back to, we've talked obviously already a bit about measurement, but I know that's just an area that you've been very involved with over the past year or so, Christy. So I guess from your perspective, what are sort of the key metrics or KPIs that brands should focus on when evaluating a retail media campaign? Are you talking through different things that advertisers should be looking for, or what's sort of the state of things you see there?
Yeah, I have these moments, even just among the team, where I struggle with the amount of time that we talk about ROAS, so just return on ad spend. And, we should at least be talking about incrementality. So is it a true lift in sales? Or are we somehow accounting for something that worked somewhere else? So is it a true lift in sales? And incrementality is a key piece. But where there is still a big gap that we need to fill and figure out as an industry is, how do we go from being one channel at a time to being omni-channel? Then how do we go from being omni-channel to being included in marketing mix modeling and lay us next to how we're performing versus all of the channels that a marketer is using to begin to show the benefit of retail media? I mean, right now we're in this ROAS by channel place, which is not at all where the industry needs us and wants us to go. So I think that you'll see a lot more once we can get to the standardization place. Like, here's how we all do incrementality. Here's how we do omni-channel. Then we can start to talk about how we integrate into marketing mix modeling, which will be a brand by brand, agency by agency customization, because the industry has a lot of different ways that they do marketing mix modeling as well. But we've got a long way to go.
I mean, obviously, I already mentioned earlier that the IAB is working through some of these standards. I guess, Glenn, from your perspective, what would you like to see in a standard?
I mean, I think the work the IAB have started and also Albertsons, are back strongly is a great start. If I could only have one wish, I'd wave my magic wand and say incrementality across every retailer, done in exactly the same way. Because today, what we're doing is we're spending significant hours, data, technology to work that out as best as we can, and that's just not good enough. If we want retail media to truly go stratospheric, we can't be saying to clients, "Well, we think this." No, I mean, again, you look at things like paid search and paid social. We don't say we think, we say we know, and that's where we need to get to.
Erin, what do you think about what a standard should look like in retail media? What are you seeing from your clients?
It's just amazing to watch, honestly, like Christine Albertson's IAB take this on. I mean, we don't have standards across a lot of things, right? We don't have standards of what a view is in a lot of the industry. So I get really excited to watch, right? To see, the collective come together and say, if we want the dollars to come, we need to do something different. And I think it's really amazing to watch. What I will say at Snowflake is that we see a lot of that measurement being done, and we see the challenges, right? Collecting the ad logs, cleaning the ad logs, understanding what that looks like, bring your data science team, building media mix models, like the amount of work that goes into this from a technology perspective and watching these teams do this, for a CMO, it's an investment, right? And I think it's true. Like, the more we can streamline that and unify what it takes to actually understand if these channels are driving incrementality, right, and what they look like across your media mix, I do think that's definitely a goal to strive for.
Yeah, can I add to that? I mean, I think you just made a really good point, because there are marketers out there at brands that just think, I'm just going to move budget from this channel to retail media, and it's fine. I've got a retainer with my agency; they'll just do it. Data scientists get involved in analyzing retail media. Clean rooms are often required to analyze retail media. So the lift to activate retail media and measure it properly is much higher than any other digital channel today. Much higher, and it takes longer as well. So my I guess advice there to marketers at brands is, I guess, don't think you can do retail media on the cheap. Sadly, it does require a lot more resource. It will become standardized. Paid search and paid social used to be horrifically complicated, and now the platforms are really, really super slick. We will get there. But today, if you want great returns from retail media, then you do genuinely need to invest in it, whether you're doing it yourself internally or via an agency.
And you know what, Glenn, to that point too, retail media actually raises the bar for everyone. So if we can crack it for retail media, then other channels will be able to be incorporated into that same measurement work and data work. And then the accountability for all media should be operating at a higher quality or a better standard than where we are right now.
Glenn, obviously you just mentioned both price and data as being two areas. Are there other challenges that brands sort of have when they're integrating retail media into their ad strategies? And also, how do you advise basically on some of those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, there's the challenge of, well, which ones should I pick? Because there are so many now. But then there's also the challenge that most endemic brands have, which is the retailer is also their customer. And that's unique in the world of marketing. Normally, it's just, the supply customer thing goes one way and it goes both ways. And so increasingly, actually, we're supporting our clients by going to joint business planning sessions with the retailers. We've always done that with our shopper marketing agencies, and we've helped our retailers negotiate whether you're right at the eye line, on the aisle or slightly below, or whether you've got the end cap or whatever it may be. But increasingly, those conversations are now turning to, okay, well, let's talk about your retail media investment. And again, this comes back to the marketing and sales thing. Quite a lot of the sales organizations, until relatively recently, were saying, "I'm sorry, what does that even mean? What's a DSP? What's an SSP? What's all these acronyms?" And so increasingly, we're joining our clients at joint business planning sessions, just so that they can get a handle. So that when the retailer says, "I think you should invest X into our retail media platform," we can be there to say, "Okay, these are the questions you should be asking. Can you tell me, if I invest X, can you tell me what incremental sales I'll get and how you'll calculate that?" A lot of sales people in brands don't know to ask those questions yet.
Well, and you know what, Glenn, we talk a lot about needing to earn the investment, and I think that retail media and certainly shopper marketing in the past was an expectation from a retailer that they would just get this much. And so being able to prove that we're earning the investment is an important piece. And as someone from the media side of the business, where I've had media companies come to me and say, "You have to invest with us," it's like, I don't, not so much. Like, I don't have to buy anyone. And there should never be an expectation that you just get something without giving something of value in return. And I think that that's a really nice shift that is happening, where retail media has to think of a CPG as a client, not as themselves as the client in the relationship.
Christy, have you had any, like that scenario that Glenn just described in terms of the joint business distribution deals, call them, with advertising becoming a bigger part of them? Is that something that you're talking to your brand suppliers with more, and how would you sort of describe how that's changing, as Glenn sort of pointed out?
Yeah, joint business planning is becoming more and more prevalent, especially for the largest CPGs who have multiple SKUs with a retailer. It's a really important and smart way to come out with aligned strategies. So, what does this CPG need to accomplish in order to hit their objectives? And what does Albertsons need to do in order to hit their objectives? And finding that common ground and driving that growth and success for both is a key piece of the joint business planning. To date, I haven't seen an agency person in a joint business plan meeting, but I do see more and more brand marketers. So it's only natural that the agencies will be coming in as well, based on what kind of relationship they have with the individual brands. And so this integration of brand marketing into the retail relationship, I think, is a really nice change. And it does allow for more of that fluidity that we've been talking about, of dollars kind of coming from anywhere to support the marketing tactics that are driving the greatest business outcomes. So it's a very natural progression. I'm seeing more and more of it happening now. It goes back to what I said earlier with shopper marketing dollars now being bundled under the more of the CMOs of the world, or the media leads. So there is definitely this, I'll call it a collaboration that's happening internally in brands, and they're coming to the joint business plans as well, because marketers are very good at supporting what the sales side of a CPG organization needs to accomplish.
Excellent. We have time for one more question today, and I want to pick up actually on an audience question that was submitted earlier. What advice would you give to brands looking to maximize their benefits from retail media and navigate the changing landscape of advertising? Erin, you want to start with that one?
Sure. My advice is always start with use case, right? Make a hypothesis, think about a use case, and really work to collaborate across your organization to unlock the data, right, that you need to drive that use case, right? It sounds really simple, but there's a lot that goes to that, right? Unifying your teams, unifying your data structure, right? Reaching across, making sure your IT teams and your data teams are right along with the marketing teams. I think that that's the key to kind of advancing a retail media strategy.
Glenn?
I think it would come back to do whatever you need to do to merge or get sales and marketing to work as closely together as possible, because that then drives the opportunity for true budget fluidity. And you're going to want that, because there's increasingly, budgets will need to change daily, not monthly or quarterly. And to do that, you need all your budget in one pot and the ability to move it from retailer A to retailer B to TV channel X to whatever it is.
And Christy, you get the last word.
Yeah, so what Erin said, what Glenn said, plus the only other thing I would say is commit to retail media. If need be, pick a couple of key partners where the greatest outcomes can be driven, and then set a learning agenda over the course of multiple months, not just 1, 2 to 4 to 6 week campaign at a time, and iterate together to understand how the systems and structures that a brand has can align with the system and structures that a retail media network has. And when they're worked through together, you'll drive far, far greater result. And then we can get out of that circular conversation around ROAS and really start to crack some of the bigger business challenges that I know that retail and brands and agencies can solve together.
Excellent. I'd like to thank today's panelists, Christy Argulon, Glenn Coney-Bear, and Erin Foxworthy for the insights they shared. And thank you to our presenting partner, Snowflake. Retail media is a growing opportunity for brands, but obviously still faces challenges like measurement and standardization. We're very clearly at the beginning of what retail media means to the advertising world, but it's clear that technology is just one piece of the puzzle. Along with new tech, advertisers are thinking about how to keep customers engaged and devices and tools secure. Thank you to our audience. Remember to share your thoughts using the hashtags Insider Events and Retail Media. We'll continue to cover these topics at Insider, so please be sure to follow us. You can also find additional resources on our event site below. There, you will also find a link to our retail media event survey. We'd love to keep your feedback so we can keep improving. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Lauren Johnson. Have a wonderful day.